Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to In the Bag. How you doing today, Brad?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's good to kind of get back to normal. I feel like things are flowing in the warehouse. We got disc releases happening. We've got exciting projects launching, new things happening. Which, about April, we always feel like things are really turning here. So I don't know. I like that. I like that season, the off season / winter, just kind of like, a little slower. You try to grind on some projects, but I like the real activity of the summer in our sport. So I always get excited about that. Playing a little bit of disc golf, which is weird. I mean, I don't feel like I play much anymore, but getting to actually go out and play. I think I'm going to play a little today. So throwing farther, putting, okay. Feeling good. What about you? I don't feel like I ever asked you how you're doing. How are you doing, Robbie?
Hey, I'm doing great. We went out, shot 2 videos yesterday. I'm now, like, it's funny. I have a series on my channel called Birdie Bash where I'm trying to birdie every hole in Birmingham. Mm-hmm. And that series doesn't get like the greatest views, right, but I think it has a pretty dedicated audience because I think that people like to see me suffer. Mm-hmm. Because the whole point of I have to birdie and then I put a punishment on the line and then I lose discs if I fail. So the first video that I did in the series is I shot the 4th one yesterday. The first one, I hit my goal, didn't lose any discs. Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
Second one, absolutely collapse on the last hole. No. And like it's set in this like mulligan space where like if I have to use a certain amount of mulligans to get a birdie, then I like lose. Mm-hmm. And once I cross a certain threshold, then it's every 5 after that, I lose another disc straight out of my bag. And I walked into the last hole with like 1 or 2 mulligans available and ended up losing 2 discs because I just could not get this like 360-foot hyzer just to work. I was like, what are we doing? That's fine. So then I go to the next one and the same exact thing happens. I'm feeling fine, walk into 18 and then just collapse again.
Yikes.
So I get to this one and I'm like, oh man, like a little spoiler alert on the inside. I throw probably the best drive I've ever thrown on camera. Okay. Like there's a 445-foot uphill shot, Brad, and I put a forehand drive to 35 feet.
Dang.
Wow. Obliterated that disc. Like it was insane. Which I had allotted a lot of mulligans for having to try to throw that in basically. Cause I was like, I'm just going to be far away from the basket.
Right.
So I got to the last hole I got to the 3rd to last hole. I knew the last 2 holes were pretty gettable and I had 10 mulligans left.
Wow.
I was like, oh man, we're cooking, dude.
Yeah.
I think it's almost time for Precious Child to retire. It's getting to a point where it's really flippy and I like the moments where it misfires and it goes somewhere, like I can feel my heart like tense a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, it probably is time for it to go.
Sad day.
But I have to ace with it because I've never aced with that disc before. So I am making completely irresponsible decisions during my rounds because I'm just throwing Precious Child on holes that it's just not supposed to be thrown on.
Right.
Because I want to ace with it. So I looked at the camera and I was like, here's the risk, guys. I'm going to spend 5 mulligans at least, and I'm going to try to ace with this disc. Let's go.
Yeah.
And there's some excitement in that section. So stay tuned. It was a lot of fun. But my mother-in-law's in town. So it was supposed to rain all day today. It got pushed back. So I think I'm going to go test out the new cigaras that I got from y'all.
Oh, heck
really,
yeah.
really excited.
Yeah. That sounds great.
So, but we have big updates here, guys.
Updates. We alert
for the podcast. So, I'll start off and share like a little bit of my thought process, Brad, and then want to bring you in. So as we are, what is this, episode 1, like 48, 49, something like that?
Yeah, I'll confirm while you're chatting.
So we're pretty far into this. I think if you talk about like weeks off and things like that, I want to say we recorded our first episode in March 3 years ago.
I believe so.
We're we're 3 years into the podcast. And I remember when I proposed this podcast to Brad, I said, hey, I want to be the PGA golf, like the PGA Superstore when you walk in and get fitted for clubs. I want to do this. Another reason for that is at the time, there was not a lot of like educational disc golf podcasts. Like I think most every podcast in disc golf felt like we were recapping what happened on the Pro Tour that week. And that's fine. I think that there is a professional sports need a following. People need to talk about that. But there are a lot of casual golfers who just don't like care about the Pro Tour at all.
Right.
Like you're not tuning in on the weekend to watch the Pro Tour. It's irrelevant. You're watching other sports or you're just not even watching sports. Right. So that's, I was like, we have an opportunity here to do something really cool. I love to teach. I feel passionate about it. So I wanted to do this podcast. And when I threw out the idea to Brad, I think we both knew eventually this could run its course, like in terms of this style of format where we're bringing people on, we're talking about their discs, things like that. Because when we've talked about like the ideal 10 disc bag, there's only so many slots that you can discuss.
Right.
Understable, neutral, overstable, putter, mid, driver, fairway. Like, and then throw in an approach disc every now and again, throw in a utility disc. Like that's realistically 15, 16 slots if we're really stretching it. And for 140 something episodes, that's been our goal. Is we've had some one-offs, right? We've had some theory episodes, and I think the theory episodes get us really excited. But as we started like moving through and recording, you guys as our audience have also adapted. And I think it's fair to say, Brad, that we were both feeling a little bit of burnout in the current format.
Yeah. And I don't think burnout's a bad thing per se. It's just like, you know, and the more guests we had on, I think a lot of you, and this is like really humbling, I think a lot of you have taken a lot of advice and are getting a lot better at building your bags. We saw a lot more consistency across the board. And it was getting harder to make recommendations with stuff. And it, you know, you can only throw so many zone-like approach discs and only recommend so many zone-like discs. You know what I mean? So, I mean, although it is fun to go out and test new discs, but we're getting kind of in a place where we're kind of testing the same slots and the same discs. You know what I mean? A lot. And 142 episodes. Today's 143, Robbie. So 142 episodes, and we'll say a couple one-offs, right? So let's just say 130 episodes of straight diagnosing bags. I think at some point, and we talked about this at the very beginning too, Robbie, if you recall, like there's probably going to be a day where that is just not the best use of the podcast anymore because there's only so many quote unquote fixes that we can do or recommendations that we can do for people. So yeah, a little bit of burnout in the sense of like, we just wanted to, you know, we want to keep progressing. We want to see more and more of you join in. We want to get you, and sometimes it's hard. We're only getting one of you involved at a time, and there's only so many, and there's only so much time to get all of you involved. And, you know, I think we've maybe come up with a more creative way, Robbie, to get more people involved more often, which is kind of cool. And yeah, the theory episodes are always fun because we do like talking about it, and it's fun to talk about, you know, our thoughts. And again, I'm not like the best player in the world, but it is, I like the strategy. I like the science of building a bag and like what, and if you notice on a lot of probably the last 20 or 30 episodes, I've started asking people like just their mindset. Like I'm really more curious about like why they're choosing it versus what they're choosing. So I think that's always fun to explore. And we're both, I mean, I think analytical people by heart and like kind of teachers in one way or another at heart. So it's been a lot of fun in that regard, but we just need a new frontier. And I think there's an opportunity to build our community even further. Because I feel like we've not capped our community, Robbie, but I do feel like all of you who are listening, we're so grateful and humble for all of you. But there's also, I think, more people that maybe they're not interested in like, okay, let's throw a couple mid-ranges today and recommend one. Maybe there's people that have their bag kind of set, or maybe they're like a sponsored player, or they're like only a discraft thrower. And like those episodes are only so useful to them. Whereas, you know, kind of this pivot or whatever we want to call it, I think we'll find more people gathering in the community. I think where there's more community, there's more like better conversation and there's, a lot more opportunity to do more cool things.
Yeah. And I think that the format had a struggle for both of us, like bringing you guys into the back end of how we function as a podcast. So like usually how it goes is on the front end leading up to the episode is sort of what I do. And then post episode is where Brad takes over. So in the front side, I'm out here trying to find a guest, bring them in, make sure that they have a certain section of the bag, give Brad a list of like, hey, here are 5 to 6 discs you can try. He gets to pick from that too. Unless I'm like, hey, we definitely want this one to be in, and then grab your second or whatever it may be. Trying to coordinate the guests. And then Brad goes and throws. We do the podcast together. That's where the handshake emoji occurs, and we hand off sort of the responsibilities. And then Brad gets the disc out to them, and then gets the episodes posted. So we both had a struggle on our side on Brad's end. Like you said, you only throw so many zone like approach discs, and then you're like, hey, I just want to keep throwing the zone. And I feel like we were at a point where we were trying some really unique discs, which was fun. And I think that it brings a certain excitement to that. But then it's also like we have to have those discs in stock. So we can't even go like crazy experimental with it, because Foundation still has to be a business. So they can't just carry every single disc that exists in the world, because people don't buy every disc that exists in the world. And so I think he's finding a world of like, there's just plastic types that just don't resonate with his hand. And there's like a world where you can't even get past that bias of, I just cannot throw this disc well, or this plastic always feels slick. How many people talk about ESP feels bad in their hands? And then other people are like, ESP feels amazing. I love it. I'll put it in every single plastic I can possibly get it. So that struggle exists. On my end, like Brad said, y'all have evolved. So I'm like, for a while there were so many people, because the podcast was new, that needed help with their bag. We had this dedicated listening audience that was applying to be on the show, and I could see hole after hole after hole of like, oh, we can fix this. Oh, we can help with this. We can help with this. And then I started near the last probably 2-3 months. I feel like I'm hunting for a unicorn every single episode of, I got to find someone who has a specific hole in their bag. That person also like has to be willing to come on the podcast and hopefully be a good guest and be an entertaining guest. Because at the end of the day, this is also an entertainment piece. So if they just come on and they're like, this is my eagle, it goes straight. Okay. Then we have to ham it up and things like that. And we had some fantastic guests. You can tell when Brad and I are having a lot of fun with our guests. And then not only that, but like we have to record. So we have to find a time that all 3 of us can align our schedules. And as Foundation continues to grow, Robbie C continues to grow. And then our guests are like joining us in the middle of a workday. So it's just, it's really difficult. So how do we get more people involved? And I want to shout out a comment, because a little over a month ago, we did a Q&A episode where we had a guest cancel last minute. And so I was like, hey, let's do a Q&A. This will be awesome. So we threw it out there to y'all, and you asked so many questions that we literally could not get to it in one episode. And the shout on the comment is the comment was from Holy City Disc Iples. And they said that they were an Overcast podcast listener, but can I just say, I haven't enjoyed a disc golf podcast this much since the end of Disc Golf Answer Man. I love the standard in the bag format, but since the death of Answer Man, I've missed this kind of content. And I remember one of the first podcasts that I ever listened to, not even disc golf, first podcast I ever listened to was The Answer Man, which was a more question and answer style format. Because some of the questions I thought, wow, this is fascinating. I never would have thought to even ask that question, and found it relating to my game while I was on the course. But also it was just fun because people got the chance to like get to know the personalities of the people talking and answering. And it just filled this like educational space that I thought was really, really cool. But it also, so many people were asking questions. And I think Brad mentioned this is where more people get involved. So Brad, do you want to kind of share like phase 2? We're becoming the Marvel universe.
Yeah, this is different infinity stone here. So really what we kind of want to pivot to is more, again, to Robbie's point, getting more people involved. Ideally it'll take some time to develop this, but like today we're going to have a topic we're going to talk about, obviously disc golf related. It's going to, and more of, we helped you build your like physical bag, the discs in your bag. Now we're helping you build the tools in your disc golf bag. So that's kind of like the pivot. It's still going to be good. You're still going to keep in the bag, whether it's discs, whether it's advice, whether it's skills, right? It's all good. We're still keeping it in the bag. So no one panic. That's not going anywhere. But, ideally, today, spoiler, we're going to talk about wind a little bit and playing disc golf and wind. I know it's a lot. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of conflicting information. We're going to give our best advice, how-tos, do's and don'ts, really get a little deeper versus like if we're going through someone's bag, like, oh, you're in Colorado. Let's talk about elevation for like 2 seconds. And then we kind of go into the discs. We're going to be more of like, okay, today's episode, we're talking about like playing disc golf in elevation, for example, right? And we can actually source questions from all of you. What are your guys' questions? What's in the bag community's questions involving this? And eventually we're going to have like a database of all these questions. So if we do an episode on playing disc golf in the wind, Robbie and I are going to be able to search wind, pull up your questions, shout you all out, give you all some direct feedback, right? So instead of like one person coming on the episode, it's going to be like multiple people are coming on the episode and joining us in the conversation, and hopefully help all of you who, congratulations to you all, have done a great job building your bags or rebuilding your bags. And now we're going to give you some tools that you can keep in your bag as well. Robbie, hopefully that was like a good explanation of kind of where we're going with all of this.
Yeah. So what we'll end up doing is in the description, we'll have a link to a Google form where you can submit your questions. What we'd love for you to include in that is we would love for you to include your name, your question, and if your question has like context to it, throw the context in there. Like that's completely necessary. Mm-hmm. And so like the standard format is going to be, we're basically just going to pull questions and answer those questions. So there will be lots of episodes where there isn't necessarily, quote, a theme, but we're just answering your questions because we want to help you, the listener. There are actually thousands of you listening every single week. And in our current format, we get to help one of you, like in a very specific way. Whereas now the opportunity grows for us to help so many of you. But then there's going to be times where it's like, hey, this is a really, like Brad, literally, when I threw out this idea to Brad, he was like, I want to talk about wind. And I was like, yes, please, let's talk about wind, because I was just at Music City Open this past weekend with 50-mile-an-hour gusts of wind. Like there were literal tornadoes in the area. So it's, I excited to talk about wind and do that. And if we had the database, like Brad said, then we go to get to grab 5-6 questions on wind and bring those in on the back end of the discussion as well. So we want you to submit your questions. And the dream is, like Brad said, that we have this database of questions available that we are working through and answering all the good questions to try and help you. Now, another like caveat of this is that the disc recommendations don't have to stop.
No.
You can easily, for your question, just be like, hey, I struggle, because the one question that we ask every guest that comes on, what area of your bag do you struggle with? Mm-hmm. That can be your question is, hey, I'm struggling with flippy mids. What would you suggest? And here are the mids that I currently bag. Here are the mids that I don't like. Mm-hmm. Like I would love if we had hundreds of those questions. Yeah. I'm struggling with an overstable fairway driver. I've tried or like a neutral to overstable fairway driver. I've tried T-birds and I've tried FD1s. What should I try? Here's what I currently bag. And then Brad and I, like, we've got 142 episodes of this. I would say we're probably some of the biggest experts in the field in recommending discs because we've tried so many. And we've been doing this format. So we would love for those questions to exist. And maybe there'll be episodes where the theme is just like, it's bag day. And we compile a bunch of those and we blitz through a ton. Or, hey, I feel like I have overlap. Here's this, and this disc. Are there any that you would cut? And once again, on those questions, the more context you give us, the better. So I'm really
I'm excited.
Really excited for this format, man.
Yeah. I'm too. I think it's sometimes, not sometimes, it's almost never a good thing to just keep doing the same thing because it works.
Yeah.
We also have to push boundaries and like continue to grow and get better. And, you know, I think reading between the lines, hearing from a lot of you in person and on comments and on social media, it does seem like we as a group, you know, In the Bag is not just me and Robbie. It's me, Robbie, Jason, Silas. It's me, Robbie, Jason, Silas, Foundation Boys. It's me, Robbie, Silas, Jason, Foundation, and all of you. Like In the Bag is a collective here, and it does feel like we're all kind of ready to move on to the next phase. Yeah. So I'm excited about it. So without further ado, Robbie,
can I throw one more thing out there?
Please,
why
please.
I think this is also a positive. As someone who does coach, I do lessons, foundationdisc.com. Not even like a big plug because you guys know they're there. But I do lessons. And one of my rules is, like, personally, if I talk about the same thing more than 10 times in a month in a lesson, I make a video on it. Mm-hmm. I got that from Josh. And it's one of those, like, I would rather, if 10 people have booked a lesson with me and you're all struggling with the same thing, that means that the sample size proves there's way more people struggling with it. So I want to make a video on it. We now have the Get Better tab at Foundation where we have these courses that you can try out, which is so cool. I did an upshot course and I'm already like thinking and brewing with Trevor on like what my next course will be. Because I think basically every time I'm up with Foundation, probably a good idea for me to shoot a course while I'm up there with them. So we're doing all these courses. You guys, if you're asking similar questions over and over again, it creates also an opportunity for us to help the overall disc golf world with either content on my channel, content on the In the Bag channel, or content that turns into a course for people to, oh man, it seems like, oh, Brad, it seems like everybody's struggling with blank.
Yeah.
We could help. We could see the problem and help fix the problem. And you guys are going to help give us the involvement. And so make sure you include your name because we will shout out every single question. We'll shout out the name as we go through. So Brad, let's talk wind.
Yeah. But before we talk about wind, let's talk about our sponsor a little bit today, Lightspeed Disc Golf. Did you have a chance to meet Lightspeed down at Music City? Did you talk to any of those folks?
I saw them. My Music City was a little busy.
That's right. Yeah, you were caddy extraordinaire.
I was running around. But I saw some of the discs and they looked amazing.
Yeah, they sent us some. Hunter and Trevor have them over with them right now. They were testing them out. They're really. I mean, they're really pumped about them. They said they're great flying discs, nice and. I think they're nice and overstable. A few of them, they feel really good in the hand. They have a great hand feel to them. I think upon like just first glance, Lightspeed looks like, oh, they only make glow discs. Well, they specialize in them. They definitely make these discs glow like no other. I mean, dare I say they're very, I think the top tier glower on the market is usually MVP plastic. Robbie, dare I say, as good, maybe a little better. I mean, they glow when they glow. And what's cool about that, they're family owned and operated, which is awesome. They reached out to us directly and said, hey, we'd love just to spread the word. They don't have a lot available right now. They do have 3 discs. They have a driver, mid-range, and I believe it's a putter. Let me check. Yeah. So Ember's their putter, Daybreaker is a mid-range, and Lumen. The Daybreaker is a very unique feeling disc, as well as the Lumen. I mean, different, and like they've prototyped these. They're not recycling molds, at least from all of my knowledge that I have. They're actually designing them. They've 3D printed them. They prototyped them. So we're not recycling other molds here. We have new molds, which I think is great. I don't think there's anything wrong with recycling molds and calling them something different and experimenting with plastic, but this is a company and that's really trying to do something different. And again, specialize in like glow discs, but that's not the only thing that they do. Definitely worth checking out. So you can go to lightspeeddg.com. Free shipping on orders over $70. I think eventually during wholesale, when that's open to us, we're definitely going to be carrying some of them just because we like to support the people that support us. Right. So, definitely check them out. I mean, I think I was a little skeptical at first, to be honest with you, because when I hear like glow, I think glow usually is pretty lackluster, but these discs are great. They feel great. The plastic feels great. I think just definitely give them a look at lightspeeddg.com. Thanks, Lightspeed, for sponsoring today's In the Bag. You know, a pioneer episode, if you will. Episode of change. Winds of change, if you will.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Glow disc, guys. Every time I play glow, I love glow. And I'm glad that people who specialize in glow are pushing the market and pushing the boundaries, because
we need it.
There's something joyful about throwing glow discs that is so cool when you find that glow disc that you really fall in love with and really enjoy, as opposed to even like, oh, I have this normal disc with a piece of glow tape on top that I might have to get glow tape off of later.
Absolutely.
So, well, Brad, you want to talk wind? What are we feeling? Where do you want to start us?
Well, let's just do an overview, right? Wind, right? It's just something.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. It's a thing. It's high pressure, low pressure, heat, etc. I am not a meteorologist, but what I do know is when wind is a part of your disc golf round, it dramatically changes your game. And I just think, I kind of have like a little notes here. I did put some notes down, and I think just generically, let's talk about how wind affects your discs, right? I mean, the obvious answer here is it's going to manipulate how they fly. Characteristics as far as both, glide, I think for sure, depending on what type of wind, right? I mean, we've all experienced the throw where you throw it's your normal like bomber, you throw the disc and the wind just smacks it down to the ground. I think that's definitely one aspect of like how wind affects your discs. I mean, I think for me, someone who does not have great nose angle control, it really makes your exposure of the bottom of your disc shine if you like let that happen. So I think that's like, and like, by doing that, different things can happen. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I think sometimes it can make you throw like way further than you anticipated, and sometimes it can make you throw way shorter than you anticipated. It makes things more understable, makes things more overstable. I think all around it, just like basically you're playing with a whole different bag at some point. It feels like to me, Robbie. How would you like to, like generically speaking, what is wind doing? I mean, does that cover all the bases, or how do you think about it?
Yeah. I think wind is both something that has to be respected at all times, and the delicate balance of playing in the wind is how much do I respect it and how much do I ignore it? Right. Because if I over credit it, how many times, like if you're listening to this, you felt this before. You step up to a hole and you feel the headwind, so you go do the hole, grab the grass, toss a little bit up in the air, a little salt bay, and then it blows right back at you, and you're like, okay, yeah, that's a headwind. So you go back to your bag, put the disc back, grab a more overstable disc, and then you go to throw it because you think that this headwind's going to flip it up and like make it move. And then it just stays being that like just silly overstable disc that you threw anyways, and it doesn't get any extra turn out of it, and it fades into oblivion, and you're left standing on the tee box for all our visual watchers, just like hands up in the air, like, what the heck? Yeah. Where was the headwind? Where was the headwind? How do we find this balance? I think that, it's tough. It's tough when you over or under respect it. And I like, you just have to remember at the end of the day, we're throwing 175 gram circles at most. Yeah. Into wind. And we're letting these little frisbees, these little plates just fly through, hoping it's going to work. Yeah. So sometimes I just get to a point with wind where I'm like, whatever. Yeah. But usually those are when I've gone through a deep, deep sadness of my round, realizing I've got no chance. Yeah, right. I mean, I think there's definitely a point. I mean, Connor and I were shooting some review videos not too long ago, disc review videos, and we stopped. Like, we were trying to throw, I think it was a tempo and the range and maybe a Gorgon at that time. And the wind was just so out of control that we were just like, these discs are not flying like
people would expect them to fly. We're not doing anybody any good. And we've been filming for over an hour at that point. And we're just like, we have to abandon this because there's just no point, right? It's a unique challenge. And I mean, these were like 30-mile-an-hour crosswinds and stuff. So, I mean, it was like pretty extreme. But, I mean, shout out to our Midwest, middle America folks. That might be a normal day for you and you have to adapt. But some of us here, I mean, I don't feel like winds, I mean, depending on what course you're at, I guess, also is how much the wind's going to affect you, because you can play, wind could be up and you're playing a heavily wooded course. It's not going to really bother you a whole lot. But, I'm thinking of the difference between if I'm playing, I don't know, let's just call it Camp Hideaway. Wind's not going to be a huge issue. I mean, in places it can be. But if I go play like Falling Creek, that's just like all field pretty much, whole different game, right? So, I mean, maybe there's some of like, all right, well, I got a really windy day. Maybe it's an ideal for this course, but maybe let's go try this course I haven't played in a minute, right? So there's ways to
even
to
the Timbrook that's half and half.
Yeah, right.
Where you're like, oh, I'll go play Timbrook because I got a little time after work or whatever, and I want to go play a quick round. And then you get out of work, you're walking to your car, and you're like, oh man, it's a little windy today.
Right.
I don't really want to go hideaway to avoid the wind.
Yeah.
So you hit Timbrook because half the holes, the wind may not be a factor.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about, and like, I feel the reason I want to talk about this, Robbie, is like, again, I am trying to get better at disc golf. I just want to, just for me, I mean, I would love to be a 900 rated player at some point in my life. I don't know if that'll ever happen. It could, but I don't have the time. I don't want to put the time into that right now. But what I do want to put the time is when I'm playing, I do want to be able to play better. And I also want to be able to give good advice to those people around me that are new. And one thing I felt like I had a handle on was like giving advice in wind until I started talking about it to Eli, actually, of all people. And then I realized that I was not the best source of advice there. So I just wanted to kind of like, and I don't feel like I'm alone. I feel like maybe it's one of those things like you feel like you have a grasp on, but maybe you don't want to ask someone because you don't want to be embarrassed or look like a noob, right? But I'm asking. I need help. Let's talk about it. So let's talk about the types of wind. I mean, really, what we're going to deal with is kind of just like tailwind, where wind's coming from behind you and pushing out into the fairway. And then you have headwind, which is coming directly at you, pushing behind you onto the tee box. And then, of course, you have a left to right crosswind, which is self-explanatory, where wind is pushing left to right across the fairway. And then you have right to left crosswind, which is where it's obviously right wind pushing to the left of the fairway. Did we miss anything? Is that obviously there's wind is not like perfectly symmetrical, so it's going to be like probably variations of those. So you might have a tailwind that's kind of like right to left, right? Or so any other type that I missed here? I mean, there's like swirling, but I mean that's just kind of like good luck. Pray for that one.
That would be the only other one that I would mention is swirls. So like oftentimes when you find yourself in some bigger fields, if the wind is big and intense, it will end up being a swirling wind, which is where it's just changing directions quite often. And also swirling winds, where swirling winds get the most people, is where the wind changes halfway up the fairway.
Yeah.
So on the tee box, you may feel like you have a headwind, but you get up to the green on a 350-foot hole, and it's actually a right to left cross there. So
it's funny. I actually wrote a note to talk about that a little later on. I was thinking about that when we were talking about it, just as like, we're going to talk about a do's and don'ts section. So preview of that section, but I think that's very interesting. But
swirling is definitely one. I mean, I'm going to use a lot of examples in today's episode from when I was on like caddying on tour this weekend. Hole 12, round 1, Katrina Allen is I was on the card that we were on that round. I was on Cadence Burgess' bag, and we had Kristen Latt, Katrina Allen, and Silva Saarinen. So pretty good card.
Right.
And I'll say that we did not come in last place on our card. So bang, 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 bang. So looking at that card, Katrina's on the tee box at hole 12, and like actively the wind changes 3 different times while she's on the tee box.
That's tough.
Like she steps up and feels a tailwind. And like, I will say this is such a funny analogy or a funny note, but I literally thought it during this round. Girls with a ponytail have like a built-in wind read.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's funny.
Because literally, like, she steps up and her skirt starts blowing a certain direction and her hair kind of like traps on the back of her neck. And I was like, oh, okay, it's a tailwind. Awesome. This is not something, my hair does not get affected by the wind, surprisingly.
Nor mine.
If it does, I shouldn't be outside. That's the real issue.
Right. Yeah, that's a very big problem.
But like she has that, and then it stops for a second, so everything settles, and then boom, it hits right to left cross, and she's like, okay, cool. And then it stops, and then it literally like somehow goes left to right cross. Like it's like it jumped over her, and it was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So she's sitting there on the D, like panicking. What am I supposed to throw? Because this is a huge drive. And the longer the drive goes, the more the wind's getting affected, which is something we'll talk about later. Like the longer the shot, the more the wind matters. But yeah, so like Cadence looks at me and she's like, what am I supposed to throw? And I was like, it's swirling. We just got to throw something like that we're confident in. Yeah. We cannot trust the wind here because we have no idea what the wind's going to do.
Right.
That's where I would say swirling matters.
Okay. So let's talk about each of them. So we talked about swirling. Swirling is kind of like spray and pray, if you will. Just kind of like have confidence, throw it out there, accept your fate. Accept your fate of like, it may not be ideal for you, but just get something remotely decent out there.
I would say swirling wind is where you essentially have to go, if we're going to use the scale the whole time of like super respect for the wind, ignore the wind. Swirling is probably the wind that you have to swing to the ignore the wind the most.
Yeah, right.
Pick the right disc and just hope you get like truly hope you get somewhat lucky with the right wind.
Right. Okay. So we have that. I think let's go tailwind, headwind, just generically, compare and contrast. So my understanding, I'm going to say what my understanding was, and I want you to correct me if I'm incorrect here. My understanding is headwind makes the disc more overstable. Is that correct or incorrect?
Tailwind makes the disc more overstable. Yes.
Okay. Tailwind does. Okay. So that I've heard both, believe it or not. So that's where I always get confused. It would make sense that the tailwind makes the disc more overstable because you're throwing it. It's more likely to push the nose of the disc up, I would think, which would make it more overstable. Correct? Is that the physics behind that? Or give me your example. The headwind tailwind thing is where I get confused. So I don't want to confuse the people with my jargon.
So these are great points, because traditionally when a disc is thrown nose up, it makes a disc more overstable.
Yes.
Wind, the biggest thing about wind is that discs are designed to cut through the wind. Correct. Like drivers especially. The slower the disc, the more it's designed to ride the wind, which is why most people can throw putters and mids farther than they can throw drivers of any form and fashion, because a putter wants to fly a little nose up.
Right.
Like, because it balloons almost as it flies through the air. So all wind, where it really gets squirrely, is how it's reaching and affecting the bottom of the disc. So the reason a headwind might feel more overstable is if I throw nose up with a driver, I'm getting the bottom of the disc exposed to the wind harder. So it's going to make that nose up angle appear even more extreme. So I wouldn't say inherent. So yes, for people that throw super nose up, a headwind will make the disc very overstable. But I would not say that a headwind makes a disc overstable, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Your inability to throw nose down,
correct,
is amplified in a headwind. That's what makes the disc more overstable.
Right.
Whereas a tailwind, the reason a tailwind makes the disc more stable, from my understanding, is because it moves it faster. So if you think about it, when we throw a understable disc, what do you want an understable disc to do?
You want it to turn.
You want it to turn. You want it to fight out. Like you want it to get a full flight.
Right.
But a tailwind is pushing it there faster.
Okay.
So it's not going to have as much time to do its full flight.
Okay.
So if it starts turning, it's not going to turn as much because it's going to get there faster. Like it's just going to run out of juice faster. But also, if you're throwing nose down, that back end gets exposed to the wind, so it carries it as well, which lets you get more push and things like that. That's why tailwind is traditionally best for distance throws.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So ideally, if my nose angle is under control and I feel a tailwind, I want to throw a less stable disc than I typically would. So if I'm throwing, let's just say I want to throw like my grackle, right? Let's just say it's like a 300-foot hole. I need it to finish left, but slightly left, right? So I'm usually going to throw like a grackle on that type of shot. But if I have like a big tailwind, I might want to throw like an FD because it's a little less overstable, but it will still push and get there and hopefully fade a little bit for me at the end. So I'm kind of going like one, again, it varies, right, with the speed of the tailwind probably. If it's just like a normal tailwind, I'm probably want to just go a tick less stable for a tailwind.
Yeah. That is my physics are probably off, but I know from strategy, yes.
Okay, all right.
So I'm sure someone is going crazy in the comments right now, and they're like, "They just turned this into Q&A podcast, and they're dummies." Okay, sure. But yeah, no, that is correct. Like if I thinking about your bag, that is exactly what I would tell you to throw.
Okay, sweet.
Is throw an FD.
So then, conversely, headwind is going to make my discs less stable. So if I feel a headwind, I want to go more overstable, generically speaking.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And I'm guessing so. Again, maybe this like if it's a headwind, it's wanting to push the nose down more.
Yeah. So if your nose angle's down, right, like it's just
pushing it down. Yeah. So again, pushing the nose down, which is making it, again, if I'm throwing, coming back to like no wind tunnel, if I'm throwing nose up, it's going to be more overstable. This is like the opposite of that, basically. It's pushing my nose down, so I want to throw more overstable, because if I want it to finish, then I need to throw more overstable. And also, it's probably generically making my disc fly more appropriately for someone like me who's throwing more nose up on accident. It's going to make my disc fly more true to probably what they should fly like, right? If I'm throwing my S-Line FD nose up, it's going to be a little straighter and not have a lot of turn to it. But if I've noticed now I'm fixing my nose angle, the more I fix my nose angle, the more turn I'm getting out of that S-Line FD, just generically speaking. So, all right.
Yeah. And it definitely makes them less stable because you got to think it's trying to cut through, it's trying to fight the wind. So this is my understanding of why it makes them less stable, is because the resistance that the disc is being met with at all times is eating into the power and spin of the disc.
Right.
So as I throw the shot, it's taking just that much more effort on every single square inch of space that it's using to progress forward.
Yeah.
So if it gets turned over, that's where it's like, oh, that's not good, because now it takes more energy for the disc to fade and fall out and do all of that. So if it gets turned over, you need more, but it is eating more because of the headwind. And thus you can have a really overstable disc. I played a tournament in Texas, and when I played my tournament there, we were playing 40, 45 mile an hour winds. And at the time I had Calvin destroyers in my bag, Calvin Halo destroyers, and those things were flying like beat-in wraiths.
Right.
And it was just like, oh, sick. Because they weren't going as far. Like, even ignoring stability, they just don't go as far.
Right. Well, it makes sense. Yeah.
That was something even watching the best players in the world this weekend throw into those kind of winds.
Right. Yeah. No one was bombing this weekend necessarily.
Yeah.
You had your one-offs, but okay.
700-foot par 4, and I watched Gannon Burr and Gavin Babcock, who both throw very far, on a 730-foot par 4, struggle to get there.
Right. Well, that makes sense. So recapping, tailwind, I want to throw less stable discs than I typically would choose. Headwind, I want to throw more overstable discs. And I think just to easily remember it, headwind, I want to fight the wind. So I want more overstay. I want a more aggressive disc.
Yep.
Tailwind, I want to kind of utilize that. I want a softer disc.
You want to ride the wind.
I want to ride the wind. So I want to like be less stable. I want to get to the ground. I want to stay in the air longer. So I'm going to use less stable. Yeah. I think that's how I'm going to remember that from now on.
Yeah. The world distance record was set with a Blizzard Boss, so super lightweight, overstable because it's the Boss, but like for them, the Boss isn't that overstable.
No.
And especially when it's lightweight, was thrown in a Tailwind.
Okay.
In the desert.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. And then I think
that's the other thing that I want to mention here on these winds is that you got to think of them like a river current.
Right.
So if you've never been like in rapids or anything like that, that was one of the coolest things and scariest experiences I've ever had in my life. Is fun fact, most rivers, unless they're like class 5s, you don't even need like certification. You just have a helmet on and you can just go float it because you're doing it at your own risk.
Yeah.
So my brother went to college in Tennessee, right next to the Ocoee River. And so that's where we learned that rule. It was like, all right, cool. Let's go make some bad decisions. So you could go to the rapids and just float them. And there comes a point where the rapids are created because there's a current going underneath the water. If you push hard enough when you go underwater and you literally swim your hands up, you can get under the current. This also happens in the water or like in the ocean. Lots of people get trapped in the current and they get sucked out like into the ocean. But you can get under the current. And when you get under the current, it is the quietest I've ever been, like place I've ever been in nature. Because it is just silent under the water.
Yeah.
All the noises from the current. Where it got the scariest is you have to push to try to get back up, but the current can reject you and just shoot you back underneath the current. So you have to have enough force to get into the current to then work your way up and out.
Yeah.
The exact same thing is happening in disc golf. Most often, tail and headwind is a current that is carrying through the air, and your disc has to get in the current or above the current. So where a lot of people struggle is they're going to try to say, oh, it's a massive tailwind. Let me ride it. So then they throw this shot, but it's too low, so it never gets into the current. So it gets rejected and just smashed down to the ground. And they're like, oh, the tailwind's dropping it. This is where you see it on putts a ton, is the tailwind drops a putt. If we get into the current, though, that's where it takes off and sails. Headwinds can be the exact same thing. It can get rejected and get slammed to the ground unless you get in it, and then you're going surf and crush from Finding Nemo, and you're going through and riding everything. So that's another thing that I think a lot of people don't think about with wind is giving it the height to let it actually ride the wind versus just getting smashed down.
Right. And
nobody talks about that, and I don't know why.
I'm definitely guilty of that now that I think about it. So just to wrap up the types of wind, we obviously crosswinds, and I think this is just going to depend really on what shot selection you're using and what, if it's right to left or left to right, and if you're right-handed or left-handed. But I think the general rule is the more you expose the bottom of the disc to the wind, the more that disc is going to be taken that direction. So for example, if I'm throwing a forehand, I'm right-handed, and I have a left to right crosswind, and I throw a Hyzer line I'm just getting spiked. Like my disc is getting spiked, right? Because it's going to grab the underside of that disc and just shove it to the ground or carry it left to right. So
depending on the height you give it, you get in the wind, same thing.
Exactly. Yeah, right. And it may like carry it. Maybe I want it to drop to the ground really quickly, but I'm not accounting for how much the wind is going to carry it left to right. So it may be very overstable, but it may be overstable in the wrong spot, if that makes sense. And again, same thing, backhand. If I'm, if it's a right to left crosswind and I'm throwing a Hyzer line, I got to account because the minute the wind hits the bottom of that disc, it's gone. So that's probably where, again, and I don't even think, if let's use the backhand example, Robbie, if it's a right to left crosswind and I want something to like stay straighter, I really have to like focus on probably disc selection more than angle selection, right? Because the more I try to manipulate the throw angle, because even if I'm trying to like throw Annie into the wind to fight it, that may give me a whole other set of issues, right? If I'm so I think it's more of
because the top of the flight plate is just as important as the bottom of the flight plate. Like you're just creating surface area really for the wind to get a hold of. So if I throw like a hard anhyzer into the wind, it's never going to have a chance to fight out because the wind's just going to hit the top of the flight plate. Gone.
Yeah, and it might stall it out too. I mean, that's also if you didn't choose the right disc. So I think
because in your same scenario, right? If you go forehand, even forehand, and it's instead of a left to right where it's getting carried, it's a right to left. Yeah. If I go heavy hyzer angle, that disc is never getting there because it's getting pushed left the whole time by the right to left crosswind because that flight plate is fully exposed to the disc. Not the underside's exposed, the flight plate's there. Yeah. So there, I would say that you do want to pay attention to your angles a little bit, but for most amateurs, most of our listeners, your angle control is probably one of the weakest parts of your game.
Correct.
So picking the right disc here can be huge.
Yeah. Yeah. So for example, and I think I maybe misspoke a little bit, but if I have the scenario, I'm looking at hole 2 at Timbrook for any of those of you that are like familiar. You're on top of a hill. It's way downhill. It's very often that there's a crosswind there, it feels like. So if the crosswind is coming left to right and I choose to throw a forehand down there, I may want to just choose, where maybe I throw a lift normally where I get like a little flip up and then finish. I might go to like Raptor because I just want to make sure I get down to the ground and fight against that, but throw it on a flat angle versus like a hyzer angle or anything like that. Use the stability of the disc against the wind, not my angle against the wind.
Yeah. Or just swing it wider, like ride the wind. I don't think that in that case, there's not necessarily a issue with leaning into the wind a little bit. So if you normally are aiming 30 feet left of the pin in order to like ride it normally, if it's a crazy wind, aim 60 feet left and let it get carried. Like that's a completely valid strategy because worst case scenario, you're walking into that wind, and if it's intense enough, you're not thinking to yourself, I've got to get the birdie now. Like, because the wind's crazy. So you just want to make sure you're not taking bogeys. So if you aim it wider right or wider left and it doesn't get carried, you still threw the shot you wanted to throw, and now you're just 30 feet away from the basket instead of parked.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think crosswind's probably a pretty easy concept for most people to grab just because pretty much everyone's thrown something in the wind, or you're driving in your car and you throw out a Cheeto and the Cheeto gets shot behind your car. I mean, I think everyone's seen that type of wind basically. So, okay. I feel good. I feel like I have a better understanding now. I feel like I have like a, headwind. I'm trying to fight the wind. I got to be more aggressive, which means more overstable. Tailwind, I'm trying to ride that thing. I'm trying to get max distance here. So I'm throwing something a little less overstable so it stays in the air. So that's how I'm going to remember it. I don't know if it's like correctly or correct, but that's how I'm going to remember it going forward.
Yeah. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to jump to the next section. So if you have another point.
Fire away. No, fire away.
No, I think, again, we kind of talked about disc selection a little bit. I think just being more, if you're playing in the wind, I think being more, intentional about your disc selection. Maybe, I think all of us, if you're not changing your bag a ton, you get pretty familiar and pretty comfortable. That's subconscious confidence that you talk about a lot, Robbie, of like, okay, it's this type of shot, right? So I'm going to throw this disc generically. I think just being a little bit more intentional and like checking yourself, like a little checks and balances of like, okay, here's hole 2 at Timbrook. I usually I have a right to left, pretty aggressive crosswind. I usually throw a quake here on backhand. Maybe that's not the play today. Maybe I should. Yeah. I think being willing to like change up your game plan is probably very, and I guess I say disc selection, but just like being very aware that you have a different bag in the wind. Like your bag is not what you're used to. So just being willing to change up your game plan. I think like I wanted to talk about some do's and don'ts really of playing in the wind. And I think you hit on a big one, which I was going to talk about, which is, I think you have to probably ride this line of like, you can't throw too low because your disc is going to get destroyed. And to your point, I didn't even think about it being below like the jet stream, if you will. And it really, you have a plan, you've already changed your disc, you made a good disc selection, you changed up your game plan, but you throw it beneath the wind and it fails.
Never had a chance. Yeah.
But throwing too high also, right? I mean, you're just
getting carried off to Neverland.
Yeah, you're asking it to fail as well. So I think being aware, and again, at the end of the day, I think as an amateur, I think I make a lot of what I'm noticing more often, especially as I'm keeping my nose angle down and I'm throwing further and I'm looking at my form actually now, I'm noticing that there's a definite like sweet spot as far as like height off the ground that I need to have in order to like maximize my distance or flight of a disc. Because I think we've seen everybody. It's just like an area of the game I haven't really thought about a whole lot. Seems obvious now that I'm saying it out loud. But like, I mean, for the last couple of years, I've just been like, hey, I just need to throw this decent. I'm not thinking about like, oh, this needs to be about like, needs to be a little closer to the ground because I don't want the wind effect and I don't want this to come into play. I'm like, okay, I need to throw this direction as best as I can. So I think, thinking about that in respect to wind, and maybe this is where your comment about respecting the wind on the scale of things, I think like where you're throwing, like being intentional about how high or low you're throwing your disc is probably that high respect for the wind category. For do's and don'ts.
I feel like for 80% of players in the world who are amateurs, your issue is that you throw on a negative launch angle and a positive nose angle. So you're air bouncing subtly the entire time. So the disc is getting height, but it's not because you're actually throwing it on height. It's getting height because your body has said subconsciously, I do not want to throw this into the dirt. So your thumb gets involved. It pushes into the disc, causes that nose to pop up, and you throw it up. So I shock people when students come to me and they're like, my nose angle's bad. How do I fix it? And I'm like, I want you to try throwing up.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, that's the nose angle is going to be bad. It's like, nope. Your launch angle is what's ruining you right now, is you're throwing a negative launch angle, which throws you into the ground. But if we think about throwing up, at no point while I'm throwing, does it make sense if I'm lining up my shot for me to try to throw with my thumb involved, which is what's causing it to really go nose up. At throwing it nose up feels really awkward. Like it just does. So for most people, if you try to throw on a positive launch angle, it's going to be there, which is exactly what you're saying, Brad, of people are just not focused on actually throwing the disc with some decent height to try to get some flight out of it. We're just focused on throwing the disc. And when we focus on throwing the disc, our body wants to generate power, and we generate power in the wrong ways, which then causes us to throw nose up, negative launch angle, and we're stuck in this eternal loop of sadness and despair when it's like, if you just took a little time and just try to throw up, you might just straight up fix your throw simply by adjusting it.
First throw up,
just throwing high
physically, and then throw up the disc up,
and then throw
as well.
up. Up, chuck.
So
chuck up.
And Robbie, I'll show you a video offline here a little bit. I did have my sons video me. They exposed a lot of my weaknesses, and I did within like 20 minutes fix a couple things. So I'll share that, and then maybe that's something we'll do on the In the Bag like YouTube channel as well. I don't mind being critiqued. I don't mind exposing my flaws as long as it's helping other people, right? And totally. I think this whole discussion with wind, it like just got me thinking about a lot of things like nose angle and stuff like that, and that's kind of what brought this up today. You mentioned this earlier as far as like do's and don'ts of like playing in the wind. I think just do pay attention to what the wind is doing off the tee, because it may be very different than what you're feeling on the tee. I think there's a lot of good examples at Falling Creek with this, particularly here locally with us, because you may be on hole 11, you're in this little tunnel and you're throwing out onto a hillside in the wide open, right? That's the obvious one. The less obvious one is like when you feel like you're out in the open and it's the same the whole way. And I think use the signs, right? I mean, I'm I always thought it was goofy that people were getting up and hitting their chalk bags or like throwing grass. I'm like, I mean, come on, guys, it's frisbees, right? But the more I'm like playing and trying to get better, I'm like, okay, valid, right? But I'm an archery guy, so I'm like usually watching. I'm like trained. I'm like watching grass and trees and stuff. So that's usually where I'm looking at. So if I'm up on the tee, I'm feeling a wind. I'm kind of feeling it with my fingers, but I look out and I'm like looking at the trees, like down by the basket or the grass by the basket, kind of like observing, okay, does it match what I'm feeling up here or is it different down there? Again, I'm stretching because I'm just now probably getting to the skill level where that matters a whole lot to me. But I think, do pay attention to the signs around you of what the wind's doing on the tee versus like in the fairway.
Yeah. And you mentioned a tunnel of like, you're in the tunnel of 11. But I think about hole 4 at Falling Creek from Reds is this par 4. Everybody, it's one of the softest par 4s on the course.
Yeah.
But it's this downhill. You're throwing across a valley essentially into another hill.
Yeah.
So, but you're on top of this hill. So what is happening at the bottom of the valley, aka the 75% of the way down the fairway part of the throw, could be a different wind. So Brad's nailing it. There's trees at the bottom there. So what are the trees doing? Like what are the leaves? Are the leaves completely still? Are they rustling one way or another? I will say, like something, if you're playing a nice big event and they have feather banners, I used to always try to pay attention to the feather banners. But Brody's actually the one that talked me out of this, because Brody and several of the tour players that were on the card when this got brought up is the feather banners are pinned into the ground a certain way. And they're not designed to like spin around like traditional flags.
Correct.
So you could look at the feather banners and be like, oh, they're blowing this way, it's that wind. It's like, no, that's just literally how they got stuck in the ground.
Yeah.
So they're not good wind reads.
Yeah.
So paying attention and learning the right angles. Another thing that I'll say is a big don't in the wind, and this is where I was on the wait list to play this past weekend, and I'm so grateful that I didn't get in. And I know that sounds like super cowardy to say, but my distance comes from flippy stuff. Like some of my easiest distance is throwing somewhat understable things, and understable distance comes out of a disc having more time in the air. This was a fascinating concept because an opportunity has come up that I can't really say much about right now. Brad, I'm pretty sure will know about it, but it's coming up in June.
Yes.
And I am so stoked for it, but I was asking some pros about it, and I was like, tell me, what do I need to be doing to prep, whatever. And the question that Gavin Babcock asked me was, how far do you throw on Hyzer? And I was like, that's fascinating. Because usually throwing something on Hyzer means I'm throwing something overstable, which means no matter the wind, it's going to be reliable to do that. The don't is if your main distance driver is 140 gram Valkyrie, the rub of that is that it needs time to ride, like to flex out and fully get its flight. The more time that it's taking to do that, the more time the wind has to just mess with it. So you want to make sure that you're throwing reliable shots in the wind.
Makes sense.
Like if your big do is, and that's where I put out a video yesterday or earlier this week talking about the trail and why everyone should bag a trail. And there are lots of comments about, I'm a noodle arm, I can't bag a trail. I think the trail, even for noodle arms,
yes, you can,
could be your overstable disc, so that when the wind kicks up, it's not so overstable. Like I'm probably going off of a trail in heavy wind because it's already neutral to understable for me at times.
Right.
That is not the case for lots of players. So if it's overstable, you got to think the wind's going to slot everything down one. So now it becomes that more neutral option for you that might actually be a great wind thrower for you.
Makes sense.
Like some of the folks in my Discord are talking about, like, dude, the trail's amazing because it's the farthest I've ever thrown a disc because the wind was right. And most of them are not saying because it was a tailwind. Most are saying because it was a headwind that made the disc suddenly like super usable for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I mean, the trail's like flippy for me, if that tells you anything. So I think the last thing, like do's and don'ts in the putting, is putting. And I'm just going to say generically, don't be a hero in the wind. Like, there's a lot more. You have a slow speed, like flat nose disc. You are exposed to a lot of error. And I think, again, if you have like you have like a left to right crosswind and you're trying to compensate for that, but yet you throw on Hyzer instead of like aiming a little bit more right, and you overcompensate for that, you're exposing the bottom or the top of the disc to the wind. Like, I think there's a lot of chance for error, in my opinion. So I don't know if you have better advice, Robbie, but I think don't be a hero in the wind if you're putting. Don't be afraid to in the wind. Don't be afraid to lay up, and that's what I feel like I do a lot. If I have like a 35 footer in the wind, I'm just going to lay this up on the ground and be safe.
Yeah, that is for sure the case. Like, there's just times where it's just not worth. Once again, using examples, you had Gannon Burr on the card, Gavin Babcock, Sullivan Tipton, and then our fourth was Aiden Scott. And I literally watched that crew. One of them was outside the circle, and only one of them ran the putt because it was like, there's just no shot here. Like, these putts are unmakeable. So why go for it? Why do something? And like, those are several fantastic putters. Just light them up because it's worth it. I will say, on a putting green, understand that your nose angle on your putt, a lot of people don't think about the nose angle on your putt, does affect the wind dramatically. So like, I, as a major push putter, am a nose down putter. So lots of folks don't like putting into headwinds because it lifts the discs, but that is if you're putting nose up. And you're going to get some lift out of it, and a tailwind's going to drop the disc. I'm the exact opposite because I'm putting nose down. If I putt nose down, headwinds push me down, tailwinds lift me up. So you want to pay attention to that. Crosswinds, though, are really the bane of your existence on a putting green, because crosswinds are really where it gets tricky, because if you come out on any Hyzer whatsoever, the crosswind, you're just not spinning and putting the disc enough. Like, there's not enough oomph on the disc. The wind's going to affect a putt way more. So that is where I find the most delicate balance of respect the wind and ignore the wind. Is sometimes if you have a 20-footer, you just got to send it. You just got to commit and you got to send it and be okay with the results. Because if you're sitting there worrying about like, oh, it's a crosswind, so I've got to make sure that I throw it like at this angle and this angle, or it's a tailwind, so it might drop it. Sometimes 20 feet, if you give enough gusto to it, there's not enough time for it to affect a 20-foot putt. And I watched all weekend, pros turn around and immediately scoop the grass and throw it up and be like, oh, where was the wind? Like, watch a Jomez practice round. I'm not trying to name names, but watch a Jomez practice round and watch how many times they miss putts during a round and they immediately turn around and blame the wind.
Yeah. I think that's probably...
Respect, ignore.
Yeah, I think that's why, spin putters have a lot of success in the wind too, is they're just sending it. I think it's less to do with like, oh, it's a spin putt, more of like they just have the velocity to kind of cut through the wind and it not really matter a whole lot. Yeah. There's a lot of error there. Like, if you miss, you're really going to miss, but I mean, you are committing to that. And I think that's a good point about commitment in the wind. Yeah. 20-footer. I'm not convinced that, okay, I'll back up my statement to 15 foot. 15 feet and end, I'm not convinced that, unless there's some wild amount of wind, like 50 miles an hour. Yeah. And I don't think it matters what putter you're using. I don't think it even matters really what disc you're using, whatever type of disc it is. If you commit to your putt, you're probably going to make it.
Oh. Hot take. I mean, I will say, I had the wild wind is there. I took a double bogey one time because I had a birdie putt in that Texas tournament, crazy wind, and I hit dead center chains on my birdie putt, but it was high, dead center chains, and so it like collapses into the chains, and then the wind kicks back and blows my putter straight out of the basket and blows it like 100-something feet away from the basket, and I was like, well, that's tough. Hey, it took me so many strokes to get back.
Point one, don't be a hero, right? Don't be a hero in the wind.
Yeah, even then, lay up your birdie putts.
Yeah. I think my last thought, we kind of talked through this, but I think just like approaching the round, like how do you mentally approach a round if it's going to be a windy round? I think if it's just casual, maybe just if you want to play in the wind for fun, for practice, just be in the mindset of like, it may not go. If you're used to shooting 10 down at this course, you may not shoot 10 down today. And I think that's okay, just for the sake of practice. And then if it's casual, you can also change the course to like help hide yourself from the wind a little bit if you don't want to deal with it. And then if it's a tournament round, I think just being willing to lay up or being willing to change your game plan and your disc selection to accommodate for the wind. And also, I mean, I think this is probably with wind or without wind, just like play smart golf. Don't get caught up in like trying to overcorrect everything. I think just playing smart golf is going to go a long way in the wind, for sure. Again, to the point of like, you're at 35 feet, it's a birdie putt. Well, maybe just lay it up and take a par and drop it in the basket versus trying to putt, missing it by 50 feet and taking a double bogey. I think that's probably a good mindset to have. But I think just knowing, being flexible and having a game plan probably would be my advice. Or not even advice. That's how I think about it. Like if I know it's going to be a windy round, I'm like, okay, well, I need to like pay attention to this. I need to be willing to switch the discs and be like a little bit flexible on what my plan is going to be for the day.
I think that's great mentality to have anytime you play disc golf is when we walk in with a fixed game plan, this is what's going to happen, and you're just unwilling to adapt, you're in trouble. You're going to hear the verbiage change in phase 2 a lot of talking about like building a skill set and attacking our game and the tools we pull out of our bag. If every plumber walked into every house that they went to fix and they were like, oh, it's a leak, this is what I'm going to do, there'd be a lot of water damage. But they have to adapt. They have to assess what's happening. And your game, the best players in the world, have leaks happening in their game. What are you going to do? What tools are you going to pull out? How are you going to adapt to the situation that you find yourself in? Whether it's your score has put you in a bad situation, the winds put you in a bad situation, or you lost the disc and now you have to adapt and pivot there. There's always adaptation, and we're excited to make those changes with you.
For sure. Well, we hope you all enjoyed the episode today. Again, let us know what you think in the comments. This podcast is for you. It's hopefully to give you more advice, continuing to build your skill set and build your own personal like bag of skills as well. And let us know, did you like this format? What do you want us to talk about next? There's going to be a form in the comments. Make sure you fill that out. Add questions. There's not going to be a cap. Add as many questions as you want, as long as they're appropriate and like you think would lead to good conversation. Make sure you're doing that. We're going to keep doing this. Today was a wind topic. What do you think we should talk about next? Let us know in the form, in the submission form. Let us know about in the comments. Let us know how you feel about phase 2 of In the Bag. I guess, but until then, Robbie, whether it is skills we're pulling out, discs, or knowledge, if it's good.
Brad, are we not going to talk about the discs? Are you not going to let us know what's new in the warehouse?
Let's do it. Okay. I can't.
Oh, man.
I was going to send it out.
He was trying to send it out, and I was like, bro, there's so many good Frisbees coming to the shop this week.
We got a lot of stuff going on. Okay, we'll do that first, because these should go in your bag, too. These should go in your bag,
You got so excited, and I was like, bro, I'm excited. I've got a disc dropping.
Yeah, we can't leave that out. So, man of the hour. So we released some special at Birdie Fam. That was the first look at them. We brought them down to Music City Open, and now they finally made it to you all, the general public, if you couldn't make it to those 2 events. The Robbie C Z Sparkle Cicada. Robbie, tell the people why they need to throw that disc.
Guys, okay, so let me tell you about the Z Sparkle Cicada. I'm excited. I mentioned at the top of the episode that I'm going to try the cigars afterwards. But if I were to guess, from what I've heard about the cigars, this is halfway between a cigar and a cicada, which is so awesome, because the cicada, for me, I threw the cicada several times in my round yesterday, and the cicada, for my arm speed, I'm hitting super hard and it's standing up and turning. This one, I'm throwing super hard and it stands up and rides dead straight and then still has a little bit of finish at the end of the shot. So these are, if you are someone who loves the cicada and you wish it had a little more stability, just like a tick more stability so that it didn't turn over as often on you if you're having that issue, perfect solution. They're beautiful. They come in clear, like a clear's probably the right word. It's like a whitish, like it's sparkle. So it shines. It's probably closer to a silver. That's probably the best word. Silver, like a silver spark. It's the Silver Ranger for you Power Ranger fans out there.
Ooh,
that's really what it went to. When I looked at it, I was like, that's the Silver Ranger for sure. And then the Red Ranger, the reds are gorgeous. Oh, they're so gorgeous. Y'all, if y'all love it, there's definitely room for these to come back. Because I think these are, people were seeing them, loving them at Music City. The Birdie fams all loved them. They fly so good. It is a usable T-bird.
That's
probably the best way to describe it.
Great description of that. So we have that, and obviously make sure you check out all the other Robbie C merch online. Make sure you're always looking out for that. Along with the Z Sparkle Cicadas, we House of Discs, we have the Supreme Raider is finally here with a little cowboy stamp on it. We also have the Nicholas Antela Austin Open champion D-Line. You heard me, D-Line FD. Pretty excited about that one. And then we also have the Fuse and their new Splash plastic. Opto Ice Splash. So very cool, kind of pushing the envelope. I love that they're doing this new plastic. It looks sick. Also have the Thought Space Persona. That's a new disc by Thought Space, and a new disc to us, The Expanse. So those are a lot of fun. Thought Space has a lot of underrated stuff, so we're trying to carry a little bit more of that, give you all a little bit better selection of Thought Space. Also, restock of Halo Thunderbirds are coming in, so not Hunterbirds, just regular Halo Thunderbirds. We're out of all Thunderbirds there for a minute, which is sad.
It's crazy.
For those of you who bought the Break 86 MD3s, those all have shipped out at this point, so you'll be getting them. Unless you have that connected to another pre-order, those ones are going to be in-house for a little bit longer. Or if you want a Hunter to sign, he just signed those this morning. So make sure you just be patient, but those are all on their way. As well as, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, of course I am. We are now, so our subscription box, killer, a lot of fun. A lot of you, we asked for feedback from a lot of you. A lot of you are like, oh, well, I'd love to do the 3-disc box. It's maybe like a little out of my price range, or I'm getting maybe like too many discs a month, right? So we're now offering a 3-disc box. So it's 3 discs and a swag item like we normally have. One's going to be a custom stamp, possibly 2 every month. They're all going to be premium discs, huge value. But we're also doing a 2-disc subscription box now, where you will get the featured custom stamp disc, but also you're going to get just another premium disc, no swag item. But great, I think it's $32 is the price on that. So crazy deal for that box as well. We have very limited spots, so make sure you jump in on that if you've been wanting to jump in on a subscription box, and $45 is just a little out of your budget. This is a great way to get in on all the fun. So we're excited to launch that this weekend. So, and then stay tuned. There are tons of discs over here. We got a lot of crazy stuff happening next week as well in the warehouse. We're dropping a new custom stamp as well next week. So make sure you check out there. Oh, this month, teaser for a subscription box.
Ooh, tease them.
I will tease. This disc is only going to be in the 3-disc box, but I will say this month to kick off our 2-disc box, all 3 discs are custom stamped this month. So no matter which one you buy, you're going to get all custom stamps. It's not always going to be the case, but I'm looking at disc 1 of the box. This is an April box, so think about like what happens in April. The first disc in the box.
No.
That's true. Rain and wind, right? I see a Hunterbird stamp, but it's not on a Thunderbird. It's on a Halo Destroyer. That's odd. Why would we choose to do that? Interesting.
Ooh.
You all can make your own assumptions after that. So yeah,
I'm so stoked.
Yeah, it's a good time. So yeah, again, I'll try to segue us out now awkwardly, but whether it's discs that are good, whether it's tools and skills and knowledge for your bag as a player, if it's good,
keep it in the bag.
We'll see you all next week for Phase 2, Episode 2.